was the inspiration for the eagle on the Great Seal of the United States. Here you see the two of these emblems side by side. The emblem on the right is that Egyptian emblem of Heru. The one on the left is the Great Seal of the United States of America. The symbol on the right was created over 5,000 years before the symbol on the left.
Good evening and welcome to For the People and the final part of our conversation with Mr. Anthony Browder, author of Exploding the Myths, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. In this segment, we continue our discussion of, among other things, African symbols on U.S. currency.
This is a symbol of African ingenuity. Now, why is that symbol on the back of the dollar bill? The eye above the dollar bill is a symbol which represents God. That symbol is derived from the eye of Heru, who was the son of God in the Egyptian history, in the Egyptian story. Heru or Horus, the symbol associated with the sun. So if you know your history, then you can look at this symbol and interpret it entirely differently than how it's portrayed to you. And it's important to go beyond the portrayal and understand the symbolic essence that's incorporated within that. The next couple of slides will reinforce that statement. Here is another symbol of the eye of God. The same eye that you saw above the pyramid was derived from that symbol. The RX symbol for pharmacy was a stylized version of the eye of Heru that was developed by the Roman physician Galen in the 2nd century AD. The logo in the CVS Corporation of the eye is a symbol directly associated with the eye of Heru, or the eye of God. The eye of God represents the omnipresent power of the Creator to see everywhere instantaneously. God sees everything that you do. So this symbol was adopted by CBS to represent what the media does. It is through the eye of the camera that you can see anywhere in the world and project that information instantaneously throughout this planet. This concept was so profound that HBO incorporated it into their logo. The O in HBO represents an eye, this eye which is directly related to an African eye. This next slide here has within it symbols and concepts that most people are unaware of. If you study this symbol, now, first of all, let me share with you the fact that over 3 different committees met over a period of 25 years to settle on the design for this emblem. So artists didn't just sit down and haphazardly create this. They argued and they fought and they debated about everything that you see before you. So when you study this image, you must be conscious of the fact that it represents several different levels of information that are presented to society. You see here an eagle holding in one claw an olive branch. And on that olive branch you will find 13 leaves. And if you look closer, the magnifying glass, you'll see 13 berries on those leaves. In the other claw, you see the eagle is holding 13 arrows. On his chest, the eagle has a shield which has 13 stripes. In his mouth, the eagle has a banner with the words E pluribus unum, which is comprised of 13 letters. And above the eagle's head is a cluster of 13 stars. In total, the number 13 is repeated 13 times on the dollar bill. So my question to you is, what do you think the repetition of the number 13 represents? Represents? Now think about it. What do you think the number 13 represents? 13 colonies? Right? Now, why would you say 13 colonies? I mean, just a natural question. That's what you were taught in school? That's what we were taught in history. The United States was founded with 13 colonies. As a matter of fact, the pyramid on the other side of the seal has 13 steps of stone, which represent the 13 colonies coming together to form one nation. Now, I'm sure you all have seen the movies about Friday the 13th. All these horror movies about Friday the 13th. I'm sure you all have heard that 13 is an unlucky number. Friday the 13th is an unlucky day. Most buildings don't have a 13th floor. Most theaters don't have a 13th row because it's an unlucky number. If you fly on Continental or TWA Airlines, you find that they don't have a 13th row. So if we've been led to believe that 13 is an unlucky number, then why do we see it repeated over and over again with the development of this nation? Why was this country founded with 13 colonies and not 12? Obviously, there must be a dual meaning to the significance of numbers. And if you research the people who were responsible for developing this country, you'll find that they did have another meaning, another way of interpreting these symbols. 13 is a number which represents the process that's referred to as spiritual transformation. The number 13 represents the process of spiritual transformation. And historically, you can see examples to support this. For example, Jesus the Christ had how many disciples? 12 disciples, right? 12 plus Jesus is. King Arthur had how many knights in the round table? All right, 12 plus King Arthur is, all right? Every Christmas, you sing a carol about how many days in Christmas? 12 days of Christmas. 12 days of Christmas plus Christmas makes 13. 13, and the 13th day of Christmas is January the 6th, the day of the Epiphany. And in the Catholic tradition, the Epiphany is the day of the spiritual transformation of Jesus the Christ. You go to court. Right now, we're waiting for a decision on the Rodney King beating. And how many people are there in the jury? 12 people in the jury plus the judge makes 13. 13 is a number that is not associated with anything unlucky. It represents a process of spiritual transformation. So it was based on this knowledge that this country was founded on 13 colonies. So there are principles and aspects of humanity, culture, and civilization that most people know nothing about. Now, I showed you the reverse of the Great Seal, that eagle with all of those symbols related to 13. That symbol was also derived from an African symbol. The next slide, we see here an image of Heru, or Horus, the son of God. All right? This symbol was the inspiration for the eagle on the Great Seal of the United States. Here you see the two of these emblems side by side. The emblem on the right is that Egyptian emblem of Heru. The one on the left is the Great Seal of the United States of America. The symbol on the right was created over 5,000 years before the symbol on the left. And it says something about how the founding fathers of the United States viewed Egypt, so much so that they incorporated Egyptian symbols, Egyptian philosophy, Egyptian architecture into the development of what has now become the wealthiest and most powerful nation on the face of this planet. That says something about how other people viewed African people and their history and their culture.
But during this time, when the founding fathers were creating these symbols, the Egyptians were then thought of as being white.
That's right. And what's so beautiful about that is that they freely talked about this association between the development of America and ancient Egypt. They freely talked about this destiny that linked the two. So that now that we are beginning to turn the world right side up, and we're beginning to understand that this was in fact an African history and culture, we can use their writings, their history, to validate the fact that this country was founded on Egyptian principles, which were in fact African principles. So it still leads back to Africa, any way you look at it. Now, again, dealing with this concept of our history being a current event, what I want to do is to kind of summarize what I've been talking about this afternoon and show you how this information impacts upon you today. The next emblem, the next slide we have here is, yes, we take you back to Haramakhet, or the Sphinx. And I want to focus your attention on the next slide now. There's a stone tablet that is situated in between the paws of this statue. Now let's look at this next slide, and I want you to tell me what this symbolizes to you. What do you think what does this slab of stone here remind you of? Tombstone. Brother is right on the money. Let's look at the next slide. Okay, that's a close-up of this stela that's placed between the paws of the Sphinx. The next slide shows us tombstone. This symbol that was used to record historical events in ancient Egypt is now also used today to record historical events, the birth and death of an individual. If you were to view a cemetery, you also find in the next slide other symbols and other images that are directly related to aspects of African history and culture. Let's look at the next slide. Here you see the Tekken. The symbol of the resurrection of an African god is used as a tombstone to symbolize the resurrection of the person who is buried in that grave. Here you see here people expressing a profound psychological need to surround themselves with African symbols in life and death. The issue is, why don't we know that these things are African? Why don't we know anything about this history and this culture? And the primary reason why we don't is because we are the best kept secret on the planet. This knowledge and this information has intentionally been kept away from us so that we never have developed an appreciation.
And is it not true that if we knew this information, we would see each other differently and therefore treat each other differently?
It would affect our behavior. If we understood that thousands of years ago we developed a concept of God that was in our image. We developed concepts of correct moral behavior that allowed us to conduct ourselves when relating to our husband or our wives or even strangers from a level of superiority. Then we would conduct ourselves totally different. But without this knowledge and with a belief in the lies, a belief in the distorted images, then we would never live up to the potential which is within us.
Speaking of potential, what I want to ask you, what is the biggest, what do you see for yourselves in your lives? What do you see, what is your greatest achievement, potential achievement? What do you want to do with your life? Anybody? Go, give her the mic, please.
My father inspires me very much, and my brother also, because my brother is a doctor in med school, and I really want to become a cardiologist or a physical therapist so I can help people who are sick, and you know, I think that's a great deed, and I think that God would bless me because I'm doing something for somebody else.
All right.
So having those positive images in your family inspires you and motivates you to follow in their footsteps.
And that's what history does.
That's what history does, exactly.
That's what history does. Don't be shy. This is go ahead.
I just want to be a lawyer. That's all.
Want to be a lawyer?
Yes, sir.
You remember, how many of you all saw Malcolm X? Remember that scene in the movie or in the book when Malcolm said that he wanted to be a lawyer because he had good communication skills, he had good thinking skills, and his teacher told him, that's not a realistic objective for a colored boy. Why don't you do something with your hands? Why don't you be a carpenter? Why don't you be a mechanic? Now Malcolm was shattered by that statement. And that was one of the major turning points in his life. That turned him off of education. So the images that you have, the images that you are exposed to are very powerful things that will help you determine your potential. That's why we've been talking about Martin. That's why we've been talking about In Living Color, because these are negative images that are shown too frequently on television, that too many of our people accept as the only legitimate form of behavior for us. And what I'm trying to share with you is that there are other options. There are numerous options available to you.
We have been lawyers, we have been doctors, but we're still enslaved. What does this information tell us about our potential to rule ourselves?
Well, I would contend that we are still mentally enslaved. We have been removed from physical slavery, but many of us do not believe in our right, in our capacity to become doctors. Most of our young men want to be basketball players, but how many of our young men want to own basketball teams, want to own football? That's where the real money is. You talk about Michael Jordan making $10 million a year. Imagine how much money the man who owns the team makes, who pays Michael Jordan and everybody else on that team. We need to begin to think on a higher level, and it's by developing the capacity to see yourself as having the potential to accomplish anything in life that allows you to transcend the limited parameters of thinking that have been established for you. This concept of mental slavery is by far worse than physical slavery, because a mental slave makes a mistake of thinking that they're free, never realizing that that by their behavior, they continue to participate in their own enslavement. So
How do you think we can begin to, well, not that we don't have it happening in certain instances now, but how can we begin to strive not so much for personal accomplishment, but for race accomplishment?
Sure, collective accomplishment.
Collective accomplishment.
One of the things that we have to do is to change our behavior. Why is it no matter where I go as I travel throughout this country, I can always tell when I'm in the black community? I see liquor stores on every other corner. I see storefronts on every other corner. I see our men hanging out in front of those stores. I see our young sisters pushing 2 and 3 babies down the street. You know, and I ask myself, why are our people in this condition? We're primarily in this condition because we have never, or let me not say never, because we do not live up to our potential. We accept the lies that have been told to us in the classroom, in history. We accept the lies that have been told to us on a regular basis in church. We accept the distorted perceptions of reality that we see on television. And as long as someone else continues to describe for you your potential, and all of those images are demeaning, then you will act them out subconsciously in all of your activities. So what it means is that you must change your view of reality, change your view of self, and see you as having the potential to accomplish the unlimited. There are no limitations whatsoever on your capacity as a man to create something, to build something, to organize something, to run a business, and to hire your people, your family members, to be a part of that business. It means that you have to begin to cultivate a sense of awareness and the desire to want to work together, because you can see 5 years down the future, 15 years in the future, and you understand the value of your thinking today. Everything that you do today determines what you will be able to do 5 years from now, 25 years from now. That's the connection. You can't afford to take this time for granted. You're in school right now, and these are the best years of your life, some of the most productive years of your life. How you spend your time will determine not only the quality of your life, but the quality of life for your grandchildren. How far you go in school, the type of job that you get will determine how your great-grandchildren will live. You've got the potential right now to affect future generations. But if you don't realize that, if you're too busy dealing with other trivial issues, then time will pass you by and will continue to perpetuate these same old mistakes.
And this is what I'm sure Ms. Huey and Ms. Johnson have been trying to tell you for the last 50,000 years. I hope, but go ahead.
All right, let's look at the next image and bring this dialogue to some closure. You all know who this is, correct? Stevie Wonder. All right, you all can identify this profile. Now, this is Stevie as he had worn his hair for a number of years in a braided fashion. Cornrowed fashion. Now, many people mistakenly thought when Bo Derek starred in the movie 10, they thought that she introduced this fashion. But what I want you to realize is that this hairstyle goes back thousands of years to Africa. The next slide shows you a profile of a Sphinx. And you see that the Sphinx has his hair in the same manner that Stevie had his hair, in braids pulled back behind his head. The next slide shows, now who is this? King Tut. You all know who this man is, correct? You've seen this face 1,000 times. How many people in this room have ever seen the back of this statue? None of you all? Why have you never seen the back of this statue? Let's look at the back of this statue. If you saw the back of this statue, then you would realize that this is a man who is connected with African people in African history. Braids, cornrows. If you saw this, you would know that they're Africans. One of the reasons why we go to Egypt, we conduct a study tours is to introduce people to an aspect of their history and culture that you're not going to get in school. In the Cairo Museum, on the second floor, on the next slide, you'll see a room which has the wigs of the priests of ancient Egypt. And here we have a photograph of a sister on one of our study tours wearing cornrows, looking at a wig or hairstyle that is identical to hers, thousands of years old. Thousands of years old. So what we have to begin to understand is our connection with this ancient history.
But when those women were wearing that hairstyle, they were a part of the rulership of the world.
Oh, of course.
They weren't just...
They weren't going down to the Korean hair market to buy extensions. Okay, they had their own businesses. Right? They developed their own industry. They were, as you stated, ruling themselves. Right? And that's a point in history that we need to be conscious of. Let's look at the next image here. This next slide represents a concept that many of us
they don't know who he is.
Right. It's a concept that represents a psychological disorder that I refer to as the Michael Jackson syndrome. And that is, if a person is constantly fed a diet of lies and distortions of historical reality, then they will eventually reject the image of the man or the woman who stares back at them in the mirror.
Say that again, please.
If a person has been fed a steady diet of lies, then they will eventually reject the image of the man or the woman who stares back at them in the mirror. If you've been told that black skin is undesirable, then you will want lighter skin. If you've been told that kinky hair is ugly, then you would want to change your hair. If you've been told that your broad nose or your thick lips are unattractive, then you will want to change those facial features. And if you've been fed a steady diet, and if you are pursuing the buck, but have a lack of a sense of consciousness and a sense of self-worth, then you will use that money to pay a plastic surgeon to do to you what Napoleon did to the Sphinx, and that is to change your nose and your lips. The next few slides that I'm going to share with you all should be of particular interest because they show you a number of personalities in the entertainment industry who have made it, but who have lacked a sense of self. Now here's a photograph before and after images.
Just figured out who that was.
Okay. Now who is this? This is Prince.
This figured out who that was.
When he was 15 years old, a high school student, before he changed his hair and his facial features. And what you're going to notice, what I want you all to notice in the next series of slides, and these before and after images, are people who sought the dollar, who have made it, but who lack a sense of self. And as a result, you're going to see a consistent change of their hair, their noses, and their lips in an attempt to become something other than what God created.
And they're really unhappy.
They are totally dissatisfied with themselves, with that image of the man or the woman who stares back at them in the mirror. Why else would you pay somebody to slice off pieces of your nose, pieces of your lips? Next slide. You know what this is? Patti LaBelle. This is Patti LaBelle before her change. Let's see the next slide. This is Patti now. Now I want you to notice a consistent pattern. Now I want you to understand what form of psychological brainwashing would cause people to do this to themselves. Let's look at the next image.
Because it's not about disliking Patti LaBelle.
No, it's not.
Or Michael Jackson or... Yeah.
This represents all of us. This represents our mothers and our fathers, our aunts and uncles. All of us have been victims of this process. And as a result, we do not like ourselves and are willing to change at any cost. This is George Benson, the jazz guitarist and singer. George Benson, before his transformation. Let's look at the next image. This is George Benson today. Okay, I hear some of you laughing, you know, but it's not funny when you understand what is happening to these people. Let's look at the next image. It's Stephanie Mills. Stephanie Mills. This is Stephanie before she saw The Wiz. This is Stephanie after she got her wish to go back home. And her mama wouldn't even recognize her if she came home now. Okay? Understand the pattern. Realize what you are seeing. Let's look at this next image. Here we see Michael Jackson, when he was a normal human being, when he exhibited normal human behavior, and in this next slide we see a photograph of Michael after he's had plastic surgery, surgery on his nose at least 4 times, plastic reconstructive surgery on his chin at least 3 times, and then decided to go back and add a cleft. This is Michael after he's had his cheekbone surgically heightened, his eyes surgically widened, permanent mascara tattooed around his eye. And he sat there on Oprah's interview and said that, I only had surgery maybe 2 times. I mean, come on. If Michael Jackson was Pinocchio, his nose would have been 3 feet long.
But do we not have some Michael Jacksons right here in the studio? Possibly. People who might fight and slap another black person because of a lack of respect,
Or people
might curse at a teacher because of lack of respect. I mean, there are Michael Jacksons all around us now. Don't just...
he is a symbol. He is a symbol which represents a process that all of us are going through. We all are recovering Negroes.
Yeah.
Okay? One degree or another. Now, look at this image. Who is this? Or what is this? Okay, that's the question. I asked my daughter several years ago, I showed her this picture, and I asked her to identify this person on the cover of this magazine. And she looked at it, and right away she said, well, that's Michael Jackson. But then she looked at it, and she processed what she saw. She saw the lipstick. She saw the makeup. She saw the eyeliner. She saw the mascara. And thought, well, men don't wear makeup. This must be Janet Jackson. And then she looked at it a little bit harder, and she turned to me and said, Daddy, I don't know who that is. More importantly, she said, I don't know what that is.